The most thrilling, spine-tingling series ever.
From the pages of R.L. Stine's best-selling books,
And the screams go on forever and ever.
We now return to Goosebumps.
Greetings, Goosebumps fans, young and old, big and small, living dead and undead. Welcome back to the Goosebumps Crew Podcast. As always, I'm your host, Isaiah Vargas, and I'm joined by my good buddy, Bjorn Palanick. Unfortunately, Nick Shaw was unable to join us this week as he is sick, but that's okay because we're still the Goosebumps Crew, and we're still going to talk some Goosebumps. Also joining us today, returning Goosebumps Completionist Austin. Good to see you, Austin. Thanks for joining us once again. And if this is your first time joining us here on the Goosebumps Crew Podcast, I want to sincerely welcome you all. If you are or have ever been a fan of the Goosebumps series of books or the franchise that it spawned, then this podcast is going to be right up your alley, because as I always say, me, Bjorn, and Nick are some of the biggest Goosebumps nerds on the planet, and Austin too, and we talk about Goosebumps for hours on end. We could talk about it for hours on end. That is exactly what we do here on this podcast. Every week we have a brand new episode to talk about anything Goosebumps related, whether it be the books, TV shows, movies, video games, merchandise, whatever it is. If it has Goosebumps in the name, we're going to probably talk about it until our teeth rot out of our mouth. So in that case, if you end up liking today's episode, make sure you leave a like and comment. If you're watching us on YouTube, make sure you subscribe and hit the bell notification so you can get notified when new episodes go up. And of course, you can check out some of our previous episodes. If you want to get Goosebumps Crew episodes a day before they go up on YouTube, you can follow us on our audio platforms, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Amazon Music, and iHeartRadio. Audio versions go up the day before the YouTube version goes up. And of course, you can follow the Goosebumps Crew on social media, on Instagram, Twitter, TikTok, and Facebook. You can also follow Bjorn and Nick at Goosebumps Aussie Fan and Shaolin, respectively, on their social medias and YouTube's. All of those links are in the description below. Join the crew today. Become a crew member. We thank you guys in advance for your support. Now, if you guys remember, in one of our previous episodes, we talked about Goosebumps Lost Books, the Lost Goosebumps books. And in that episode, we talked about two instances where a title was conceived through a contest, but they never got made into official Goosebumps books. Now, one of those titles was Dead Dog Still Fetch, which we did an interview with the winner of that contest, the 1998 contest, Brain Juice Terrifying Title Contest, which Braden Gardner from Iowa won. And it basically was a whole thing where he won with his title Dead Dog Still Fetch. R.L. Stine got to come to his school and they got to make an entire short story in front of his entire class based around that title. And we did a whole interview with him, episode 30, if you guys want to check that one out. But there was another title that we mentioned in that video that was also the product of a contest that actually happened 4 years prior to the Brain Juice Terrifying Title Contest. And joining us today is the winner of that contest, Jim Smylie. Jim, welcome to the Goosebumps Crew Podcast. How you doing today?
Doing great. Thanks for having me on.
Absolutely. We're glad to have you on. And we're going to talk about your title that you came up for the 1994 partnership between Scholastic Connect and America Online, the Name of Goosebumps Title Contest, and you won with your title, Slime Doesn't Pay, and we're going to talk all about that title today. But first, before we get into the contest, I want to know, so obviously you joined the contest and you won, so you must have been a pretty big Goosebumps fan back then.
Oh yeah. I don't have quite the impressive collection that I can see behind each of you guys, but I definitely had a lot of those books. I was a really bookish kid, and I was always looking for genre stuff. I was really into sci-fi, really into fantasy, and I'm not sure where I saw my first Goosebumps book, but I think the first one I really remember getting into and reading over and over again was Monster Blood. And ever since that one, I picked up God, what was it called? The one with the really awesome spooky cover of the skeleton family on the Polaroid, like Stay Cheese and Die.
Say cheese and die.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that one, and then Night of the Living Dummy. I definitely remember reading those over and over again. All of my books were dog-eared to hell and back, and if I'm allowed to say that word on this podcast,
You are.
but yeah, I just remember Stine was really, really good and is really, really good at like taking the everyday parts of childhood and like making them relatably scary in themselves before there's even like a zombie or an evil doll or haunted goop that shows up. Like a pair of bullies becomes like this unfair, frightening thing that you have to deal with, like the sense of like powerlessness or frustration or not being able to trust adults. I related to a lot of that because I was kind of a nerdy kid who needed to explore the world and didn't really know how at times. And yeah, Goosebumps was really good at just connecting to that. So I was very into it. I got a lot of them from Scholastic.
Absolutely. And definitely, you're absolutely right. Goosebumps is that sort of book series that really did resonate with kids back then for those particular reasons, because it was both an escape, but it was also like a mirror to the realities of a kid. It took sort of like the everyday troubles that a child would have and put it through sort of the supernatural lens, but you still also have like the frustrations and the hurdles that a kid has to overcome. Like you said, the not being able to trust an adult or dealing with bullies or being, like unpopular in school, like whatever the case is, like a lot of kids had those problems growing up, and Goosebumps was able to channel into those realities, but again, put it through sort of that spooky supernatural lens to act as sort of an escapism. I know that certainly is how it was for me, and I know definitely a bunch of other kids who grew up reading these books. So what was it like to be a Goosebumps fan? Because at the time of this contest, the book series was about 2 years old, and the merchandise was sort of starting to ramp up before it like really, really exploded. But what was it like? Was it like a super hot thing at the time?
You know, I'm thinking back. I would have been at the time of the contest. I think I would have been 11 years old. I was born in 1983, and our school, honestly, it was much more about, I think, like Pogs and Magic cards at that time than Goosebumps itself. But I did know, like, I saw other kids reading them. And sometimes the library would get new ones and they'd be out and I'd be frustrated. So I did know that they were a presence. And I was definitely starting to see like the Goosebumps swag and merch show up in the Scholastic catalog. I think there was like a glowing brain eraser or something like that, or maybe a skeleton pencil that I just desperately begged my mom to buy for me. I never lived that dream, unfortunately. But I know that it was a big deal. Like I could tell there was a community around it, even if I didn't get to sit down and talk my favorite books with people very often.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I mean, did you collect any books? Would you start your own little collection of books, or like buy merch or anything like that?
It was mostly just as the books came out, I would get them. Monster Blood, I think there were like 4 of them, right?
Yeah.
I know every time a Monster Blood came out, I wanted that. Monster Blood was my absolute favorite. It might have been the first book I bought, actually, or my mom bought. And the Night of the Living Dummy, and then again, Say Cheese and Die. I keep remembering more of that now. I can remember like the guy getting his picture taken and dying of fright from it and all that. But it was basically just, I think my only criteria were, number 1, is it a Goosebumps book? And number 2, is the cover art like scary? Does it have that like nice spooky jump out of your skin thing? And if the answer was yes to one or both, I wanted to read it. I think my collecting dropped off a little bit later. By the time I got to like 7th or 8th grade, my interest had kind of tapered down. But I always had a serious fondness for them. And like I remember the Goosebumps TV series. Gosh, I can't remember when that came out, but I remember even at my age being excited to at least check out the pilot of it. So yeah, I was very much just, ooh, is the book out? All right, let's go get the book. Or we'd go to the library and I'd be like, I gotta go check and see if the name Goosebumps is out. I was definitely keeping an eye on the shelves whenever I could, and if I had the means and the method, I would grab that book.
Absolutely.
Yeah. 95 and 96 was kind of like the biggest years of Goosebumps. 95, the TV series started, the merch was starting to come out, but 96 was the year that the merchandise exploded. Like most items you find have 96 on it. 96 and 95 was the early days. I think in 1994, the only real thing that I know you could get was they did some of those like book packs, and they did some of the like there was the Goosebumps backpack that you could order in the back of the book. That was in 94. Like, there were certain things that you could get, but 95, 96 was like bang. It blew up. Like,
you're bringing things back. I remember, I think, an advertisement for that backpack now. I wish.
It was always fun to look in the back of the Goosebumps books and just see like what was coming soon, or like this book is coming soon, or like we're starting a brand new series. And these books were coming out every month. Like I don't know if you guys are not familiar at home, like how frequent these books were coming out, because nowadays Goosebumps books come out every few months. Like you'll probably get like 2, maybe 3 a year, depending on the release schedule. But back in the 90s, they were like boom, 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 boom. They were coming out. And that's just the original series. You're not even accounting for like all the spin-offs and the game books and everything. So like Goosebumps were everywhere. So I can imagine probably if anyone was like keeping up with the collecting, it was a constant barrage of just being like, oh, now I got to get that. Now I got to get that. Now I got to get that. I really like that you had like a criteria for like which one you wanted to get. Like, is it Goosebumps? Well, yes. But does it like look scary? And honestly, that's probably one of the reasons why it became so popular, is because they looked scary. You take a look at like Night of the Living Dummy and see, you know, that creepy slappy face on there and be like, that is horrifying. I want to read that.
Was there one like
people to therapy?
The monster, it might have just been Monster Mask. Maybe that was it. But it was like a little kid holding up like a really disgusting like monster face.
The Haunted Mask.
The Haunted Mask. Yeah. I remember that one too. God.
Yep.
It's kind of like the book equivalent of like going to Blockbuster and walking through the horror aisle and seeing all the like which had the craziest box art. Like that's whoever was doing the design on those runs of Goosebumps books knew what they were doing.
Well,
100%. Like,
I
got to tell you this because when you're talking about the scariest covers, because I've said this a couple times on the podcast, but one of my good friends, his younger brother had to go to therapy because of the cover of Night of the Living Dummy. Literally
that wasn't a joke. Oh, God.
It wasn't a joke. No. Like, it traumatized him really bad that he had to go and talk to people.
Poor kid.
It was that scary. Like, Tim Jacobus really just, you know, even though like Night of the Living Dummy 2, you see more. Like, you know, they say less is more, like in horror, like the less you see, kind of like why the Blair Witch Project is so terrifying. It's like, you know, all you see is his head, you know, and really like up close on the cover of that book, you know, and there was just something about it that was very eerie, and it obviously didn't. And some kids are just naturally scared of puppets anyway. Yeah. So if you've got a fear of puppets, like that book cover just would not have been for you. Like,
so not the biggest Goosebumps fan, that kid.
Yeah.
I hope he doesn't hold a grudge against Stine or against the artist.
I might be misremembering. Was it either the Living Dummy 1 book, or was it the Girl Who Cried Monster tape, like that somebody chased around in your family and like they were so scared?
Oh, no. My brother was traumatized of the Girl Who Cried Monster episode. So back in the 90s, obviously you had certain Goosebumps episodes that were released on tape, primarily the 2-parters. But then you had episodes like the Girl Who Cried Monster, which was genuinely a scary, creepy episode that Jack Lenz, who did the original score, even said, I don't know how that one aired, to be honest. But it did. And my brother hated it so much because like my mom burnt it like back in the day when you actually had to record off TV on a VHS. And she actually recorded The Girl Who Cried Monster off the TV because you couldn't buy that one back then. And I remember watching it. My brother hated it so much that he like pulled the tape out, smashed it, ripped all the tape out of it so that it could never be viewed again. I cried because I knew I couldn't watch it again. But yeah, he was traumatized by that episode. So Goosebumps, you know, in the eyes of young kids back then was just like, some of it really was creepy and spooked a lot of kids, you know, and it's, sent them to therapy. So,
but you get to a point too where that cover art and those books were obviously they were scary, but they also did their job in hooking the reader. It's what Tim. I'll always remember what Tim told me. He was like, my job back then was to be the hook. You know, me and R.L. Stine worked as a team. He was like, I was the hook. I hooked you in as a reader, and then R.L. Stine would supply the story. So it's like it's a good 1-2 of like, ooh, what is that? And then you read it. So, you know, it's why cover art is just as important as a story, in my opinion, because as a kid, you're going to be attracted to something that looks really interesting, and then you want to read it. So it did its job.
They had to, I'm sure you've, talked to them at length about this or read at length about it, but this is just me guessing based on all this, like the amount of empathy for your readers, like the understanding of your audience, and as an artist, like having to think of like what's the perfect balance of but also like getting the kid to flinch but then want to reach for the book. Like they definitely had a great handle on that. Just thinking back now to walking through the library and looking at the shelf yay high and like looking at those spooky covers and wanting to read it. So
I remember
did anyone else do this? Did anyone else read the Goosebumps books and sometimes just flick back to the front and then keep reading?
Yes.
And then flick back to the front, like as they were reading it?
I'll tell you what I did do. When I grew up, I was mainly a library reader, and my library bindings didn't have a synopsis on the back. So you literally had to shop the covers. So if I went to the library, I would look at the cover and I would look at Bad Hair Day and be like, nah, I'm good. I don't want to read you. But then I look at something like The Girl Who Cried Monster, or something like The Werewolf of Fever Swamp, or just something with a captivating cover, and I'm like, okay, I want to see if this scene is going to be in the book. And that was something I would, when I was much younger, was always looking for. Is the cover scene actually in the book? And often than not, it wasn't. But it was still something fun, for think back on.
In the case of Say Cheese and Die, it almost wasn't.
Yeah.
That cover art with the skeleton family was actually conceived by Tim Jacobus before, I think it was before the full story was written, but Scholastic loved it so much that they basically like made Stine put that scene in the book. It wasn't in there originally. So
man.
The whole scene where it was, and he made a dream sequence so he didn't have to insert it into the actual story. But that scene was basically, that cover art was so good that Scholastic made Stine make that a scene in the book. So that's the power of a cover art.
Oh my God. I gotta reread these books now. My mom still has, she's been cleaning out her house. She still has my entire Goosebumps collection. I'm now remembering. I'm like, Girl Who Cried Monster. I think I have that one too. Because you guys were talking about the spooky cover. I just Googled it. I'm like, oh God, I remember that image. But yeah, now I'm like, gotta pick these books up again. They're a breeze to read. So
yeah, they certainly are. I actually went on 100%. Vacation.
You've probably got now that I think about it, if you were ordering them through the catalogs, you probably have all the original books in first print. Now that I think about it, because if you were ordering them as they were coming out through the catalog, yours must be such a pristine first print, first edition book of every book.
Well, as pristine as an 11 or 12-year-old will let it be, but
exactly.
Yeah. I mean, I've got a 19-month-old in the other room. I should keep him around for when I want to scare him later in life. Only a little. Scare him only a little. But,
only a little. Or maybe a lot. You never know. But one more thing I'll bring up is we were talking about the library, and I certainly went to the library to look at books, the Goosebumps books, but I actually remember this was back when libraries had VHS tapes that you could check out. I remember seeing the Goosebumps VHS tapes, and those had the same cover art. But I saw that was where I first saw Stay Out of the Basement and Welcome to Dead House and Night in Terror Tower, and I was just like, oh my gosh, like those are terrifying. So like, so why can't I take my eyes off this? Like I couldn't stop looking at it.
Wasn't Stay Out of the Basement? Was that just like the green evil hand, like holding a doorknob?
Yes, indeed.
I can't believe I remember that. There we go. That's how good these covers are.
Yeah, it's so good and never truly leaves your memory. So that's the power of a cover art. But and you mentioned that Monster Blood was probably your biggest favorite. But were there any other books that like you can remember as like being really, really good to you?
Oh, if I pulled up a list of them, I'm sure names would stick out. But no, those are the ones that come to me as Monster Blood, and then Say Cheese and Die, Night of Living Dummy. And I do remember now looking at that creepy cover I've got on my other monitor. I remember liking The Girl Who Cried Monster a lot. But no, I'd have to go through my pile and be like, oh, this one was a favorite. I'm sure the moment I had my hands on them again, it would all come back.
Yeah, it'd be like the Ratatouille scene where it's like you flash back to your childhood because you just take a look at them.
Yeah, instead of a scrappy French kid eating ratatouille, it's a nerdy 11-year-old like huddled in the corner trying to pretend he's not terrified by what he's reading. Yeah,
like it's like that, like a kid sitting under the cover with a flashlight.
Exactly.
Yeah, just like that at night. Oh man, those are the days. But now we get to this contest. So in 1994, there was a partnership between Scholastic Online and America Online, or Scholastic Network and America Online. And it was basically pretty simple. It was name a Goosebumps book. And I mean, this was big news. It's like, wow, we get to name the next Goosebumps book. And that was the whole contest. It was like, you get to name R.L. Stine's next book. So this contest was like the first of its kind, and as we said, we did cover the second one that happened in 1998, but this was the first ever Goosebumps contest. So how did you find out about this opportunity to name a Goosebumps book?
It must have been in one of the Scholastic catalogs, and my teacher may have even told me about it. I think her name was Miss Harris. One of my teachers knew that I loved Goosebumps, and it does seem like the kind of thing she would flag for me if I didn't see it myself. But definitely can remember looking at a entry form on a Scholastic physical Scholastic catalog copy, and just being like, "Oh my God, I have to do this."
Yeah, I mean, again, first of its kind. You look at that as a kid and you're like, whoa, like I got to do that. I know I would certainly jump at the opportunity. But so what was the process of coming up with a title? I mean, you're an 11-year-old kid and you're trying to think of like, what would I want to be a title? So like, what was the process and how did you land on Slime Doesn't Pay?
Well, I remember going to the library. I went to Central School and Glencon. We had this big library, but these long tables, and I sat down with one of my notebooks and I just wrote out like any word combos I could think of, like puns or alliteration. The other thing I remember is rabid rabbit, to give you an idea of the quality of the other ideas. And I just kept trying to hit like what rolls off the tongue, what sticks in your head. And then Slime Doesn't Pay kind of hit like a bolt of lightning. Like, oh, it's short, punchy, uses a known phrase, and it has horror implications. So it stuck with me. I wrote that one down. I think I also submitted Rabid Rabbit. So thank God they didn't treat that as my only submission. But yeah, that's the one I went with. I definitely spent a long time sitting at that table in the library, though, before I got to that.
I mean, it's a great title. Slime Doesn't Pay.
Chicken, rabbit, rabbit. I see what was going on here.
Yeah. I mean, Slime Doesn't Pay is a really good title. Like, it really is. It seems like something that R.L. Stine would come up with. So I can see why they chose that as the winner. You mentioned Rabid Rabbit. Were there any other scrapped title ideas that you can remember?
I wish I could recall them. They're so bad that I purged them from my memory, and anything I make up now would be too good to realistically be what they were. The one thing is, I wonder now, and I think I said this to Jude DeLuca as well, if Slime Doesn't Pay, if I originally subtitled it Monster Blood 2, because I think this was either 2 or 3. I think this was either before 2 or before 3. I might have originally said like Monster Blood: Slime Doesn't Pay or something, but that also has been lost to time. That might just be me hypothesizing.
It would be an interesting title for a sequel, Slime Doesn't Pay related to Monster Blood, so I could definitely see the process behind that. But I don't know. I don't know what else to say. It's just a really good title. So,
I mean,
it's like your muse just came down to you, just like gifted.
I've been working in writing for in various kinds for like 15 years, and I've never come up with anything that good again. So, what can I say?
Was there any thought at any point of like the contest stipulation of like naming the next Goosebumps book? Like, man, I want to be that kid that gets to name a Goosebumps book. Like, do you remember thinking anything along those lines?
Definitely. I definitely wanted to make my mark on Goosebumps. Like, again, I kind of a nerdy shut-in kid. I don't know if I thought it would make me cooler in the eyes of my peers, but I would have something to my name, And I just loved Goosebumps. I wanted to like the idea of, Jimmy Smylie. Jimmy Smylie's Slime Doesn't Pay by R.L. Stine or something like that. Bit of a mouthful, but like the idea of being associated with it and contributing to it really got me hyped up.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, imagine if somebody asked you to help name the next Star Wars movie or something. Like, of course, every kid's going to just leap out of their chair at the chance to do that. That's how big Goosebumps was for me at the time.
Well, you make your mark on history, essentially. So it's like you jump at the opportunity to be like immortalized in some way. No matter what it is, even if it seems like, maybe it won't be a big deal. It's like, you never know.
I milked it with my family for like 10 straight years. So it was a big deal to me.
Maybe that franchise will have a big bounce back in community support, and then they'll reach out to you like 20 or so years later for an interview.
Who could have foreseen?
I know.
So, go back in time, tell me. I'm like, what's a podcast?
Yeah. Yeah, if only you could tell your past self. It's like, you know what this is going to lead to? It's going to lead to you being on a podcast. And you're like, what?
It's like a radio show, only you choose whether or not there are ads.
Yep. You came up with the title. Did you have any like thought process behind what the possible story could be? Even if it didn't turn out that way, like, was there sort of a story attached to the title, or was it just the title?
Man, I can remember just thinking back to imagery of like evil slime around somebody's ankles. Like, like when you step in mud and you can feel it seep up to your shoe. I remember now thinking about that image with like evil slime. But beyond that, no, I didn't really have much. I figured I'd leave that part to RL.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Well, it's always interesting too, because it's kind of the way that R.L. Stine does, does his books too, because he comes up with the title and then comes up with the story from the title. That's how he does it. So it's like you were channeling him. You were channeling him. But no, I mean that's the thing about a title too, is that when you hear that title, you're like, what could that be? Like, what does that like entail? Like, Monster Blood is like, what would that story be? Like, what is Monster Blood? Is it blood from a monster? Is it like what is it? Or Night of the Living Dummy? Is it like a living ventriloquist dummy? It's like, that's the power of a title, is like you hear it and you're just kind of like, what would that story be like? So that's what's interesting about coming up with a title. And again, R.L. Stine does that too. He always talks about how he sat on the title Brain Juice for months because he liked the title so much, but he just could not come up with a story for it until eventually he was able to, and then it became part of the Series 2000 series. So again, that's the power of a title. It's just it's like the key to a new story. You unlock the door to a new story. Absolutely.
This is sort of tangential, but it's making me think of I did musical improv comedy for a while, and one thing you would always have a musical director who could improvise along with the performers, and they would cue you in the scene for, oh, now the song's happening, based on like they'd hear a line of dialogue and just start playing, and then you would be like, okay, we've got the title now. What the heck is the song going to be about? R.L. Stine sounds like a master at that.
Absolutely.
Figure out, build off of that one great idea.
And there's a ton of titles that like he came up with but never turned into books. I think what was it? He had like 43 Freakout Street and
Feeding Frenzy, The Good, the Bad, the Very Itchy, Dimwits of Doom. There's a bunch of them.
Yeah, so like titles he could come up with but just couldn't come up with a story for, and then was just kind of like, But that Brain Juice one, he just could not let that one go.
You gotta make sure you let Brain Juice, sit and dry age and marinate until you can find the right use for it.
Yep, you age it and then you take a.
He could have really gone dark with Brain Juice. He could have had it that someone literally like grabs the brain and just like makes actual juice out of it. Could have made like a real dark, gory story.
I can even picture like the cover art for a book like that. What if it came out in the 90s? Like you'd have the brain and you'd have like a juicer or something. I don't know.
Not too far off from the actual cover art, because it's the cover art for the book is a actual brain, but the juice is being poured on the brain.
Oh.
It's one of the. In fact, you know what? I'm gonna do this.
Yeah, I was about to say I could Google it, but you probably have it right behind you.
Let's take a look. Here it is.
Ha!
So
mind is a terrible thing to drink. Yeah, okay, that's some good, just old-fashioned Goosebumps right there.
Oh yeah, this is like, you look at this and you're like, oh yeah, that's Goosebumps right there.
I remember when I was, so to put this into perspective, I was a TV show generation kid. So I was born in 94. My first interaction with Goosebumps was the TV show. But I did catch the tail end of Series 2000 in like 99 and 2000. And I'd go to Borders Books and I would stare at Brain Juice's cover on the Goosebumps shelf. And I would just stare at it for like 10 minutes. My mom was like, are you going to buy it or just stare at it? And I can remember telling her, I'm like, I just want to stare at it. I'm too afraid to read this thing because of the brain. But like the embossed covers on the Series 2000 books were also another thing that just blew me away. Because instead of just the font being embossed like the original 62, even the artwork is embossed.
Mm-hmm. So you can feel
the folds of the brain right now.
Yep. It's like you're touching.
I'll feel it vicariously through you. You're stroking it like a cat.
I think that's what a psychopath does.
R.L. Stine is petting a brain next to a typewriter right now.
That's how it's his brain. That's how he like gets new ideas. He just like gives it a little pat and is like, I got it.
Exactly.
Or it's like it's
R.L.,
like
if you're listening, we love you.
We love you, man.
So my next question, I guess, would be, I don't know if Isaiah has this already planned, but so you come up with a title. Did you hear that you won the contest, or that you made it far into it, I should say?
I think it was actually my mom who told me. And then I think it was the Tribune. It was either the Tribune or the Sun-Times reached out for a quote about it. And like, I was still just vibrating with excitement. I think it was over the phone that they asked the questions. But gosh, I think it was either my mom or my teacher. And then from there, we got the call from the newspaper a couple days later. And I just was beside myself.
I mean, that's a really cool thing to be told.
We had like
a
your phone tree. Yeah, the whole family just like, oh my God, did you hear about Jimmy? Oh my God.
So the media like apparently knew before you even knew. That's crazy to me. So
yeah, I think so.
It sounds like they were trying to promote this like under wraps. Like, hey, this kid won. Why don't you reach out to him and talk to him and ask him questions? Maybe that was a sign that this was actually a huge thing, because they're getting the scoop on the next Goosebumps book title, and a homegrown hero in Illinois made the title. I mean, you must have been feeling like, oh, you're on cloud nine. You're going to be a celebrity. You're going to be like the coolest kid. I can only imagine
definitely,
the euphoria.
yeah. I had like the whole like sitting back, sliding on the sunglasses feeling, like everything is coming up Jimmy right now. I just felt like the coolest kid in the world. And you know, I had stacks of Goosebumps books in my house, and here I was thinking I was naming. I can't remember if it was branded as like literally name the next Goosebumps book, whatever you give us will be the next one. But I definitely in my head, I was like, I just named the next Goosebumps book. Like this is going to be on shelves soon. I'm going to point at it and be like, I named that.
Yep, that was me.
Sadly, exactly. I built that, son.
I think that's what they were advertising it as, is that you were going to name the next Goosebumps book. Like they were going all the way. And considering this was October 1994, so God, I'm trying to think like where exactly that would land in the actual. If it was part of the original series, it would probably be in like the 30s, probably like that area, if I remember correctly. But
yeah, because if the contest ended in late '94, then I would have put it somewhere in the late 20s, I think. But given the time that Stine would actually have to sit down and write the book and go through editing and all that, that would be an extra few months. So it would have come out in the 30s if it did come out. Sadly,
I think the way Kid Weave Stoop in his video put it, probably would have been between like I think Barking Ghost and Jelly Jam, like it might have been, but you never know. But and that's another thing too, is like, you know, we were talking about like the opportunity to make your mark on a franchise you really like. It's another thing to like actually succeed. Like you just get told like you did it, like you made it. You're gonna like live your dream now. So it's a pretty cloud nine, like you're living on cloud nine sort of feeling. So did Scholastic reach out to you when you had won? Did they like send you a letter? Did they like call you?
You know, I think the way that we found out was, I think, a phone call. But then the official like congratulations, Mr. Smylie, came in the form of this massive gift box that came in a coffin. It was totally, I was about to say totally metal, but totally Goosebumps.
Wow.
Like it came in a big cardboard coffin, and it had a congratulations message. I think maybe a personalized one from R.L. Stine. If it was, I have lost it, which makes me just very frustrated. But definitely came with a card of congratulations. You know, way to go, winner! You have received a year's membership in like the Goosebumps Club. And I think it came, Isaiah, with that hat. I think I had one of those hats for a while, and came with a bunch of candy. No, it didn't come with the backpack. That I would still have that backpack for sure if it did. And then I think it came with some additional Goosebumps books. So it was all rolled into one package.
That's awesome. And you got a year's membership of the fan club, so you probably were like getting tons of Goosebumps swag like throughout the rest of the year.
Yeah, I think I was. Cool. I'm gonna have to dig through. My mom still has like all of my old bedroom stuff in an attic somewhere. I'm gonna have to dig through some boxes next time I visit her.
Yep, we're gonna have to look for all that stuff.
I'm gonna be sending this podcast around to my whole family because they've been, ever since Jude first reached out, they've been abuzz. Like, did you hear about Jimmy's book? Jimmy's book is back on the menu, and then it came out, and their minds were blown.
Yeah. Again, it's like, you know, it's like the light at the end of the tunnel. But it's time to get to the dark part of that tunnel. Because unfortunately, the book did not come out. So there was no Goosebumps book called Slime Doesn't Pay, and the title was not used in a Goosebumps book. I'm specifically paying attention to Goosebumps book. We'll get to that in a little bit. But it did not adorn the cover of any Goosebumps book for the rest of the original series or the rest of the 90s run. How did you find out that it wasn't going to happen? Did they reach out to you, or did it just not happen and Just
You know, it
noticed
just didn't happen. If there was ever a conversation, I don't think I was part of it. We just they were like, tune in, keep an eye out, and nothing ever happened with it. And I don't know, either maybe I or my mom sent an email at some point inquiring about it, but we never really heard anything. We kind of assumed, oh, maybe it's lost in the shuffle. Maybe it's going to be released in a couple of years. And gosh, I think maybe Monster Blood was part of my original suggested title, and we saw another Monster Blood book had come out, and we were like, did he just decide, oh, I'll write another Monster Blood book? But yeah, there was this interregnum. We didn't hear anything about it.
Could you imagine if the book came out like Monster Blood 3, because I'm assuming it might have been that one. Could you imagine if that book came out and just the tagline was like "Slime doesn't pay" or something? You would have been like, come on.
Oh God, man, what a slap in the face that would be.
That'd have been
I should say this before we ever found Jimmy. All right, before it became known who we actually had a face to the name. Let's just say there was a massive theory that Monster Blood 3 perhaps was possibly Slime Doesn't Pay at some point. Maybe Stine might have entertained making it, because with the new introduction of the character Kermit and the aunt character in that story, people seem to think that possibly could have been his initial idea. That maybe Scholastic was like, well, maybe you're going down the Monster Blood route. Why don't we just make this full-on Monster Blood 3? Mm-hmm. So that's just a theory out there. We don't know if that's true, but food for thought. That could be true, and I hope it is for young Jimmy's sake, because having a person win a contest is like putting a face to the fandom, and we all get to live vicariously through you, and we want you to succeed, so we feel like we succeed with you sometimes. And seeing a kid not get his dream met is just soul crushing. Mm-hmm. And it's such a sad story. When I first heard of it, I was like, I got to get to the bottom of it and figure out what's exactly going on here, or what happened, because there was like nothing on it. And the only thing we found was like the Chicago Tribune article about it. And then we found something else on Archive, which we'll probably get into later. But that was the only thing we knew for a long time about it.
We're so much more, like, there's so much more information about everything, even the tiniest little thing available these days. But like back then, I was a pretty connected kid. I was America Online. My family was using the World Wide Web back when it was still a weird option on AOL, and I didn't know where to go to look for any of this stuff. And it became kind of a running joke, and then like kind of a, hey, what the heck thing in my entire extended family. Like, so did anybody see Jimmy's book yet? Hey, no, anybody know anything? Anybody see the book? Hey, Jimmy, didn't you win a contest a few years back? Like, I think, I bet my mom, I'll have to ask her, but I bet she held a grudge against Mr. Stine for a while, for this book never coming out.
Mm-hmm. I can imagine, but I don't know. And you know what? Going back to that theory about Monster Blood 3 possibly being Slime Doesn't Pay, because that is possible too. But even then, that's still like not exactly like a happy ending, because it's like, okay, maybe it was. You can assume that it was considered, but at the end of the day, they still didn't use the title. Yeah. So it's like we can theorize about it, but it still didn't get used for a book. So it's like
it was the whole point of the contest, and it just feels like a slap in the face, especially if you're an 11-year-old kid and you're a Goosebumps fan, and hey, you're gonna have your title on a book. Like, yeah, like Austin said, it's soul crushing. That would have hurt me, like you wouldn't believe.
I was pretty fan. Oh, sorry, I didn't mean to talk over you, but I was pretty ticked for a little while. I'm not gonna say I stopped reading Goosebumps because of it, but I definitely. I was ticked off, I was like, but, well, what happened? I got this awesome gift box. Thanks, guys. But like, where's my book? And it never came to fruition. It was not meant to be for whatever reason.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's a terrible experience to have to go through. Was there any compensation for it, or was it just radio silence?
Just radio silence.
Oh man,
I wasn't expecting like a ticker tape parade or something. I just wanted my book, you know?
Yeah, you want what you want what you were promised. So like,
I didn't need royalties. I just wanted to see. I didn't even need. Well, it would have been nice to have on like the inside cover, like as titled by Jim Smylie or something. But like, I didn't need residuals. I just wanted to see that book and be able to point at it and be like, hey, look, guys, I named that.
Yeah.
No, exactly.
It's terrible, and so for the longest time, ever since that contest, and you know what? That's probably why, this is my speculation, but that's probably why they had to do the second title contest. That was the one between Gushers, I think it was Kellogg's, or whatever company was doing. I forget.
No. Roll-ups.
Fruit roll-ups,
yeah. Fruit roll-ups,
yeah.
And Goosebumps, and it was like this big thing. So yeah, it was tying in. It was 1998, and they were tying in with Brain Juice. But yeah, it was Scholastic and Fruit Roll-ups doing this contest once again to name a Goosebumps story. So it was almost kind of like, oh man, we messed up. the first one didn't pan out well, so we got to do another one.
I'm just gonna throw this out there, guys. If the first one didn't pan out, you could always just go and write the book.
Yeah.
Like that would. Yeah. And then nobody's going to ask any troublesome questions in 15 years.
Yeah, it's just being like, oh, why didn't you just write the book the first time?
Yeah.
But this time for this contest, they specifically said that it's going to be a short story that's not officially published. So they're like, so now they can't come after us if we don't make it a book, because we said it's just going to be a short story.
They could have done
slightly
Slime
less
Doesn't
exciting
Pay as well. They could have jumped into like one of the Tales to Give You Goosebumps books or something, triple hit. They could have added Slime Doesn't Pay to one of them, even if it was,
Jimmy,
one of the
you should have
later
joined that contest and submitted the same title.
Oh my God, that would have been fantastic. It's like R.L. Stine's like, well, this is a great name. Like, wait a minute.
It's like, and then you walk out, because there's a whole thing where they like announce the winner and they walked out, and then you just walk out in front of them and be like, remember me?
Mr. Stine, I'm glad you liked my title again.
It's time to reap what you sow.
You would have been like 15 at that point, though. You would have been like 15, like in high school, and be like, wait, you want my book?
This 15-year-old kid comes walking out being like, so where's my book, Mr. Stine?
Oh my God. It's like a professional wrestling entrance. Like, is that? No, it can't be. Oh my God, it's Jim Smylie.
God, it's Jim Smylie. And then you body slam R.L. Stine.
Oh, God. Again, Mr. Stine, we love you.
Yeah, just
go straight through a table covered in tacks. Yeah,
covered in tacks.
Hell in a Cell. Jim Smylie, R.L. Stine. 1996. I wonder, like his writing process. I don't know much about it, but I wonder if part of it is because it wasn't his title. Like, if his thing is, I come up with the title, and from there everything else flows, and then he gets someone else's title plunked down in front of him. Maybe it's like, well, that's a really good name, but that's not mine. I can't do anything with it. I wonder if that was part of it. And that's why they had to add the caveat for the next one of it's unofficial, not quite fan fiction, but not quite official Goosebumps either.
Mm-hmm. Definitely. Austin?
Yeah, but yeah, Bjorn had a point. Like, would it have been a compromise for you, Jim, if, let's say, Stine made a short story or a triple header story out of the title, using the same title, and maybe made you the main character? Would that have made you equally happy?
Yes. I bet I can imagine that several of the relatives that I've already mentioned would be like, no, you have to have the book be named. But if I had a book, even a Goosebumps short story where the main character was named after me, I would have like just gone nuts. I would be shoving it in people's faces, possibly even more than just the official title book. If I could be like, that's named after me. Like, oh my God, it would have been like being on primetime television.
Yeah, but it's like, it's like you don't get any compromise. Like, look, if you don't do the whole book, like an entire Goosebumps book, at least find some way to follow up on it. Like, yeah, it's great that I got all this merchandise, but like, that's not what I signed up for. It was just, it was the side stuff.
If the problem was that it would impede on Monster Blood because it's too similar, you had Give Yourself Goosebumps back then too. You could have made this a Give Yourself Goosebumps book and made it a Choose Your Own Adventure, and probably still included Jimmy as a side character in it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I would have. Yeah, I would have bought that. I would have showed that off too. Give Yourself Goosebumps, Monster Blood, or jeez, Give Yourself Goosebumps. Slime Doesn't Pay.
Yeah. I mean,
they could have incorporated it somewhere else for sure.
I am surprised, honestly. It's probably because it was in that period right before nothing ever went away. Because like the web people were using it back then, obviously, but like it just, you could memory hole things a lot more easily back then. That's why I was kind of shocked when Jude reached out to me about it, because I was like, oh my God, I didn't realize people would even remember this contest happened. But God bless fandom and the internet, because you guys think, and nothing gets past any of us. But yeah, I think it was because it was right on the cusp of before everything had a digital paper trail or everything had a wider presence. That maybe that's another reason they were able to just kind of, I don't want to say get away with it, because it's not like they committed a crime, but it kind of flew under the radar. And I'm surprised nobody asked at the time of the second contest, whatever happened to the one with the first contest? But
and they're just like,
that's true.
I don't know what you're talking about.
Like exactly. One of the titles, even, like, because when you have like a horror franchise, like I don't know, Massacre, and they put the final chapter. They could have done like Last Monster Blood, like Monster Blood 4, Slime Doesn't Pay. Yeah. Do you know what I mean? They could have added it even to like the actual title as like the, but
I would have taken that. Yeah. Halloween, H2O, 20 years later. But Monster Blood 3, Slime Doesn't Pay.
Yeah. 2 years later.
Exactly. Not quite the same dramatic time lapse, but
Yeah, but it's a time lapse.
God.
But yeah, no, it's just, it's really interesting that they botched the first contest and then they did a second one and then legitimately made a point to be like, okay, it's not going to be an official book though, so you're going to have to settle for what you get. R.L. Stine come to your school and come up with it.
And Stine has never really addressed this directly, right? Like he's never talked about it.
Not really. And
well, I can attest there has been private conversations that I've seen from him and Jude, which we'll probably get into shortly, that he seemed very earnest that he thought it was a great title and just forgot about it. So
I can live with that as long as he still genuinely liked the title. Like that. My other theory was like he had no involvement in this and the marketing guys just picked one and he was like, oh, okay. Oh, great. All right, sure. Thumbs up. Send him a skeleton. Like, if it turns out he knew about and liked the title and just in the throes of writing God knows how many books every week for his publishers forgot about it, I can live with that now. Just makes me wonder what happened back then.
I love that. Send him a skeleton.
No,
send him a coffin.
In no other context would send him a coffin. Like in no other context is that a good thing. But
and with a note that says climb inside.
Oh my
god. It's that SpongeBob meme where it's like, okay, get in.
Oh yeah, get in.
I will chime in though, Jimmy. At the time of the contest you were a part of, it would have been in the middle of the 20s of the original series, and around this point is when Goosebumps started to explode with spinoffs, like with like Tales to Give You Goosebumps and Give Yourself Goosebumps. They came out around that same time. I'm also kind of wondering maybe if the hecticness of trying to keep up with, not only one book a month now, but 2 books a month, and then a short story collection every once in a while, that maybe it actually did just get lost in the shuffle. And
it could be.
Because I thought about that myself, and I'm like, I don't believe grown people would have just cast aside this kid's title and just made him feel bad for no reason. There has to be something like some reason of legitimacy as to why I never got paid.
I can't picture like R.L. Stine like busy with a cigarette, like no time for this kid. Like he's probably just literally like I can't even remember how many words one of those books would have, but like you were saying, it was one a month in those early days. So he was probably just drowning in deadlines. And yeah, if that's when the spin-offs were all happening and he had a direct involvement in virtually everything, I can easily see, like as a creative professional myself, like things just getting lost in the shuffle at that point. That's why I try not to hold it against him now. I joke, but like the guy had a lot on his plate. So if it is simply, gosh, I liked it, but we never made it official and it just fell behind with all the other stuff that I got as it exploded in popularity, that actually makes sense. And in a way, it's kind of comforting.
It definitely seems like the most likely scenario in all this. And I mean, unfortunately, the reality is that we just don't have the answer. Like, this is all purely speculation, and it could be really anything. But I think that might be the most likely scenario. But there is a sort of a secret superhero, if you don't mind me saying this, in all this, and that would be your brother, who fought like hard to get this book. And your brother, I know there was a Reddit like discussion going on in 2019, if I remember correctly, and your brother went on there and asked R.L. Stine, and he was like, "Hey, my brother Jim had this title that he submitted for a contest back then and it never turned into a book." And I think that one, I think there was 2 instances where he reached out to Stine, and that one I don't think he got a response. And correct me if I'm wrong on this, but I think there was a second time where he reached out to him, and I think R.L. Stine did respond, and he was like, "Oh, I really like that title." It was like, "I'll see what I can do with it." So it was like, okay. And then, not too soon after, we got a little bit of the fruits of that labor. But yeah, your brother, I mean, he fought tooth and nail to get that title used in a book. So it's pretty cool of him.
Yeah, he definitely was actually kind of ticked after that first Reddit thread. He was like, "Yeah, Jim, I brought it up and I like described the contest in detail, and I never got an answer." And then when he got the next response, he was not satisfied. He's like, "I got kind of a non-answer this time, so still didn't get that book out." And that's why we were all blown away when the detective work from external parties started happening.
Yeah, because they started reaching out to you to figure out the story, and then the story came out. Because Jude reached out. I know, Austin, you were doing your detective work to find Jim. And then Kid Weave Stoop on YouTube did his video about all the lost Goosebumps books and went into detail about both contests, the 1994 and the 1998 one. So the story was starting to become more well known, and now we knew, the faces to go with the names. So like we were finding a lot of this out for the very first time, or we were finally getting some answers to some questions that were had. So I mean, that's one of the great things about both the Goosebumps community and the internet as a whole, is that some of these things that may have been lost to time 10 or so years ago are like being uncovered now. So that's what we like to do. That's what we do. And it might have paid off, because just a couple years ago, we finally got an R.L. Stine book called Slime Doesn't Pay. So I guess this time Slime did pay. It just took a few decades, but we finally got Slime Doesn't Pay on the cover of not a Goosebumps book, but an R.L. Stine book. So what was your reaction to finding out that it finally happened?
I mean, I giddy. Like, I couldn't believe it. Jude DeLuca was the first one to tell me. He reached out and he pinged me. He's like, "Hey," well, first he was like, "Hey, I've been in contact with them, and they say, there might be something percolating." And then he contacted me again with the news, like, "Hey, Jim, they're actually writing it. It's going to come out." And I was beside myself. I was like, "Oh my God, thank you so much. This is so exciting." I was telling my whole family. I know at least one person was like, "Well, is it Goosebumps?" I'm like, "Shut up, I don't care." I was finally going to see my idea, a 20-year journey however many decades. I'm 40, so I'm basically already a skeleton. But just blown away finding out that it was actually going to exist. And then just last year, Jude actually went and got a copy signed by RL for me and mailed it to me around the holiday. And getting to hold it in my hand, I was actually crying as I read the card he sent with it. Like, I had started reading it back then, but we have a baby, and so I haven't had that much time to read things. And I actually, in prep, sat down and read through it over the past day, and I was beaming the entire time. Like, it feels unreal to be holding like physical proof that this contest happened.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. It's a shame that R.L. Stine didn't just write a little something extra in the book for you saying, sorry it took so long, Jim. R.L. Stine.
Sorry for the delay. Here you go.
Dude actually asked me, he was like, hey, I'm actually in line waiting to get this autographed, but he said RL signed it, but he was too tired by this point. I waited in line. Do you want me to go back when he's fresher and have him sign a copy with a note? I'm like, no, man, you're good. You've already gone above and beyond what any normal internet hero would do. So well, I know in his heart that R.L. Stine was thinking it, though.
Absolutely. Yeah. Well, and it's another thing to speculate about, but it's more than likely the case that all of this uncovering of this story is what led to this book being made finally. And again, it's through Jude doing what he does, and even your brother, poking the bear and being like, hey, when's that book coming out? It finally happened. And now R.L. Stine, he was swamped back then in the 90s because Goosebumps was so big. But R.L. Stine doesn't write as many books now, and he's trying to focus on doing standalone novels now that are not Goosebumps. So it was probably easier for him now to really sit down and be like, okay, what should I write for this title? Like, you for a fact that he probably was being like, okay, this is something I gotta close the book on.
Hey.
Yep. Waka waka.
We got jokes, folks. Yep. Yeah, I definitely, I think if this was just something that got brought up on Reddit threads occasionally, or something that the fan community forever wondered about, it wouldn't necessarily have finally come to fruition. To relentless dedication of fans, and the amazing internet sleuthing by people like Austin, and dogged questioning from my brother Bart, or from intrepid reporters like Jude, who finally got the ball rolling on this. Not through any malice on Stine's part of I'll never write that book, but more just it's been decades, so having this passionate community and passionate people like you guys to actually get it over the finish line, it's really meant a lot.
Absolutely.
Anytime, man. And I'll say this, when I first learned of the story, one of the first things I thought of would be, we got to find where the story originated from, who was behind it. I was the person that helped Jude find you, right? I've already told you this, and he reached out to you. But from conversations and updates from Jude throughout the whole process, I got to see behind the scenes direct messages from him to R.L. Stine. And I think, given all the information Jude presented to Stine about the title, hey, this is the contest that Jimmy won. Any update if you're ever going to use the title, blah blah blah. And R.L. Stine was like, man, that's such a great title. I don't know why I never used it. Literally, I'm not kidding. In this time frame, within a span of a few weeks, we get an announcement that Blackstone and R.L. Stine signed a book deal, and the first one is Slime Doesn't Pay. And I'm like, holy crap, I think we done it. We finally got this book made. And that's
this was his debut with Blackstone too?
Yeah, so this was his first book in his book deal with Blackstone Publishing.
Oh my God! That makes it feel even better. My title gets to kick off a whole new partnership.
And I think Shark Night is a part of that too. That was his most recent standalone novel was Shark Night, and I think that was the second in this deal. So yeah, R.L. Stine's got a bunch of new novels coming out and much more planned. So it's really interesting. And from what I've heard, I unfortunately have not read Slime Doesn't Pay or Shark Night. I'm trying to get to it. But from what I hear, they're pretty good books. And I believe you said that you had read it recently, Jim?
Yeah, I just finished it this morning, actually.
What did you think?
It's a delight. I mean, it's obviously for younger readers, but that's well. Let me rewind that because young adult fiction is incredibly important and well-respected genre. But it's just delightful. Like I definitely immediately felt that that high stakes everyday problems for kids thing that I talked about earlier, again reading it, because it's I'm the youngest brother, so I can't talk about having an annoying younger brother, but I can talk about having older brothers who, even though decades later they would go on Reddit and ask really nice questions for you, can at the time seem inexplicably mean, etc., etc. And so this book having like I'm not going to spoil any details, but my brother seems like a monster, and my parents just seem like they're not taking it seriously enough. And I've got all these other things that are important going on in my life, like all these high stakes to the protagonist, low stakes to us living our grown-up lives. But like that sense of empathy and that sense of like realism, even in a book that's partially about evil monsters and slime, it really took me right back to like 1993, 1994, and I'm smiling just talking about it because by the time I got to the conclusion, I was like, oh my god, I love those books. I'm so happy about those books.
Yeah, I remember hearing about the announcement of that book, and I just felt like so happy. Because it took a long time, but you finally reached that happy ending, where you finally got to see the fruits of that labor come to fruition, and I mean I can only imagine the feeling it is just to know that like I have it, it's here, finally.
Yeah, I mean I told Jude that this is the kind of thing that the internet is for, like. Bringing these communities of people together, bring it like at its best, internet fandom and internet culture lets people connect over stuff like this, and then out of the goodness of their hearts and out of curiosity and passion and fandom, they can do something like resurrecting a long dead title from a contest in the 90s, and bring belatedly a little boy's dream to life, and like. All just because you're all that passionate about Goosebumps and because of kindness and because of, friendly interest. It's just been marvelous to watch and be part of.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Oh man, just picture this for a second. They adapt it into a film or a TV episode, and it's
I get
your
to play
title.
the dad. That's my requirement. Is I get to play the dad. You don't have to pay me. I just get to be in it. That's
yeah.
And here's the thing, Jim, and he has some credence to this. Bjorn's on to something. There was a movie recently made called Zombie Town, which was based on a standalone R.L. Stine book, and they are looking more into his standalone stuff to make more films around. I can definitely see Slime Doesn't Pay possibly being a movie in the future. Well, we just got to keep our eye out for it. But if that happens, I think you got double the win here because you got a book and a movie out of it. So,
oh my god, I will get the poster if that's a movie. I will get that framed poster.
That'd be incredible. Maybe it would be R.L. Stine's way of being like, you waited long enough. I'm going to give you double the recognition.
It's going to be a post-credit scene. He's going to walk out like, "Hi, I'm R.L. Stine, and I'd just like to say thank you, Jim Smylie."
That would be great.
Yeah.
Or Jim Smylie is the name of the villain in the movie, and he's immortalized as pretty much like a Goosebumps villain almost.
I would also take that.
Or the movie is actually not an adaptation, and it's a documentary about you trying to get R.L. Stine to make the book.
Oh God, that's like internet
he's like on the golf course, and you're like chasing after him. It's like write my book.
Mr. Stine, was the title not good enough?
He's like, let's go, come on.
Where's the book?
For it.
Oh my God, there is a movie in there somewhere. We gotta write it.
It's an interesting idea for a book. Like, again, you know, when you hear that title, you're like, what is that story about? And for the longest time, you're like, we didn't know. It was just a title. But now we have a story to put to that book, and the story is pretty interesting because it's not the typical like monster blood or blob sort of thing. It's a little bit different in a way, and I won't spoil any story details. But I definitely recommend checking out the book if you haven't already. Even though it's not Goosebumps, it's still R.L. Stine. It's still his writing. You can basically just pretend it's a Goosebumps book because it is essentially a Goosebumps book, even if it doesn't have the branding on it. But yeah, it's just incredible. What an incredible story from the beginning to the contest to now. And yeah, I can imagine your family was quite happy that it finally came to be.
They were just over the moon. And I mean, there were so many jokes being cracked, like, about time. Did he send you any money to go with it? And a lot of them were amazed at Jude's dedication and amazed at, Austin, you being able to find me in the first place. And like, so how did you get in touch with these people? What did they, there's a whole community out there. And I was like, there's this constellation, there's this whole galaxy of fandom that I am, in hindsight, not surprised at all it exists and is so passionate. But they were all really happy for me. I brought it with, because Jude sent it to me around Christmas. I brought it with to a family gathering and was holding it up so people could see it. It was something. They're all. I'm going to forward them all this link too. So if you get any new subscribers, maybe it's them.
Yeah,
Awesome.
Definitely hope that they check this out, and I hope everyone does, because this is a great story connected to the Goosebumps universe. Absolutely. Have you kept up with? I mean, I highly doubt that you've probably been reading Goosebumps in your adult life. But have you kept up with the series since then? Have you seen all have you seen the movie or anything like that that's come out, or has it kind of just been a blur?
It's sort of faded into the background, to be honest. But honestly, talking about it now, I kind of want to pick them up or pick up maybe some of his slightly older aged material, just to see, get more of that R.L. Stine content back into my brain. But yeah, for a while, it just kind of faded away. And I definitely, it put a smile on my face when I saw trailers for the Goosebumps movie. Was it Jack Black?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and didn't it condense a few different stories? At some point, I'm gonna have to sit and watch it for Halloween or something.
It was a big hodgepodge movie. It was sort of like a Jumanji meets Goosebumps, where basically this kid moves to a new town, and Jack Black is R.L. Stine, and he's living next door with his daughter Hannah. And R.L. Stine in this universe, apparently, whatever story he writes, the manuscript contains the monster. So all the manuscripts of the Goosebumps stories, and they are all Goosebumps, actual Goosebumps books. They looked into every single one. But when you open it up, the monster inside comes out. So they open Night of the Living Dummy, and Slappy comes out, or the Werewolf of Fever Swamp, and the werewolf comes out. And then they just unleash them all on the town. So it's like a big hodgepodge of Goosebumps. It's definitely a movie for the fans, because as a fan, you look at those and be like, oh, I know which one that comes from. So it's definitely that. But I would recommend it. It is a great spooky movie to watch around Halloween with the family. It was a great theater experience for me, because
I bet
I got to be that person who's like, I know that. It
was a fun movie. It was just the way I look at the Goosebumps movie, it's just a fun time for the kids, But like Isaiah and I have one nip, and it's any Slappy sequel book should have been used. Not the first one, because I expected Mr. Wood to come out. So I was like, any sequel book, it could have been any of them. Could have been Revenge of the Living Dummy, Slappy's Nightmare, Bride, 2, 3. Any book should have opened up revealing Slappy, not the first one.
I once talked about
producer is taking notes right now. So
yeah,
Yes.
I once brought up the idea of every Slappy book is open and you just have an army of Slappies. because each one has a different Slappy inside, so you just have like a dozen Slappies.
See, now I'm gonna have nightmares tonight, guys. Just like that scene in Akira with the evil toys, except it's all Slappies like crawling up onto the bed.
My Slappies are up there. I have 3 of them.
God.
And every time
I didn't notice those until now. That's
the exact reaction. No, every time somebody comes in my room and they're like, "What the hell is that?" And it's like, "Oh, it's Slappy." And he's like, "And you sleep with that in the same room?" Like, "Yep." Pretty much.
Just a creepy perpetual elf on a shelf you got going on over there.
Oh yeah, you want this all
every night. The cover of Slime Doesn't Pay is also kind of nightmare fuel.
Yeah,
I was surprised by the quality of the cover of this. It's not Tim Jacobus, but Catherine English did a pretty good job on this cover, I think.
Very striking. Very striking art, and the artwork inside is great too. I don't think the Goosebumps books were art and text, right? Like, God, I'm dating myself by saying that, but yeah. So I hadn't picked up a Stine book that was like that had artwork as well in it, but yeah, they do a really good job. It's
there is one. It's called Slappy Beware, but it's a newer book. That's the only one I could think of.
Yeah. No, R.L. Stine always talked about how, because I think people have asked him, they're like, have you ever thought about like putting artwork in the Goosebumps books? And I think he said, sometimes it's just more interesting to think about like what's like, to not actually see it, but just like think about what's going on in the story, especially as a kid, because as a kid you have such an imagination that you just envision it in your head. It can never really be captured by by artwork alongside it. You want to think it in your head. That's certainly how I approach Goosebumps.
Yeah. While we kind of got the graphic novels now, like in a sense, you kind of got. I mean, it's not the whole.
Yeah,
book,
but that's for people who don't like to read. So,
hey, you are talking to a guy who has manga and comics on his shelf too. So,
but I think they could do it. I mean, they've done it with like the Harry Potter books now. Like they've brought out like the illustrated ones. I feel like they could for some Goosebump books. Maybe just take the really iconic ones and do it if they really wanted to. But then again, who knows?
Well, like this one, it I won't show much, but like it when it has artwork, it's generally not like the scariest thing on the page. It's more like the supporting imagery. Yeah. Oh, there's like a scene setter. I don't want to spoil anything about the later pages, but a lot of it is more scene setting or supporting or like one element of what's being described. But
I thought this one was pretty creepy.
That one has some scary stories to tell in the dark vibes.
Mm-hmm.
That's
the OG releases, not the new kidified releases, but that's a conversation.
Jim, you've mentioned that you yourself are in a profession of writing. How is that going? It's pretty interesting that you've gotten a career in writing yourself now.
Yeah, it's I'm in. It's a lot less exciting than Goosebumps writing. I do a lot of professional copywriting, corporate training, e-learning, that kind of stuff, the things that pay the bills. And then I was in comedic sketch writing and did a sitcom pilot. I still write one fanfic a year on Archive of Our Own, but I'll never share my handle with anyone. And right now I'm freelancing and working for another marketing agency, and then have actually been sitting down recently and looking at my toddler and thinking to myself, maybe I should try and write some kids' books, which my mom has been yelling into my ear for the past year and a half as well. So yeah, it's more below the line work, so to speak, but definitely just I've made my living writing in various different ways, and I think Goosebumps certainly help with that, like that sense of connecting with people, of getting your thoughts down on paper in an interesting way. I've kind of always liked it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I definitely know a lot of people who read Goosebumps and wanted to write their own scary stories, including me. I wrote many scary stories that I would never want to show a living soul ever, because not because they're scary. It's scary because of how bad they are.
Oh God, I wrote some story about befriending a robot who would beat up a bully in like 6th grade, and If someone wants to torment me, they'll like lock me in a room with someone reading it out loud over a speaker because it was that bad.
Yeah, hopefully in all this detective sleuthing, nothing about that arises.
Oh God. Yeah, that's the bad guys.
I won't dig that up.
That's the evil detectives. We hope they never find anything.
Absolutely. Well, we got one more surprise in store before we end off the evening. So, as we mentioned earlier, there was an AOL chat where R.L. Stine announced the winners of the contest in October. It's actually Halloween night of 1994 is when the runners-up and the winner of the title contest were announced. And funny enough, we're going to take a look at it.
That is a 1990s website.
Yes, it is. So this is the original Goosebumps website. We actually found this. If you guys in our audience have been keeping up, we found this in our 34th episode with Tyler Young, where we explored the Goosebumps website. And right here on the R.L. Stine page, we have a little link right here that says Chatting Up a Storm on Halloween. And as we click on that, we are met with an entire chat archival of the America Online chat with R.L. Stine on October 31st, 1994. So this was an entire chat where an MC and R.L. Stine talked and answered questions that were submitted by fans. And this is like a super long chat. There are so many different questions that R.L. Stine answered related to Goosebumps, whether it be the books or the TV show. But for the sake of our topic, we go all the way to the bottom here, and right before they end off the night, R.L. Stine says, I like to, hold on. There we go. I'd like to announce the winners of our contest now. And the MC says, great idea. So R.L. Stine says, here are the winners in the Name a Goosebumps contest. First, I'll list the 5 runners-up. We have The Grim Reaper Lives in My Locker by Mike Sneed, SN Mentor 16. Frog's Breath Can Kill You by Cliff973. Scream Cheese by Tobia Falzone by J Coffee 325. Have You Seen My Head Lately by Michelle Devon, Harbor MS. And You, Me, and Monster Makes 3 by Lauren Fishman, LC Kids. And the winner, the grand prize winner, Slime Doesn't Pay by Jimmy Smylie, Central S. Congratulations, Jimmy Smylie. Thanks everyone for so many scary titles. So right there, that was the first time that your name appeared as the winner of this contest.
On the website too.
Oh man, the official. I gotta save a JPEG of that or something.
I'll make sure to send you a picture.
Yeah, send me that link. I gotta share that with the family too.
Absolutely. It's a really cool archival of different. I mean, there's like I said, a ton of questions that were answered by R.L. Stine, but it was really cool that he got to announce the winner here. And these titles, these 5 runners-up, are pretty interesting titles.
Yeah,
I like
those
some
are
of these.
solid names. I like Scream Cheese and Have You Seen My Head Lately the best, I think.
Scream Cheese is so good. That's one I would love to know what the story behind that one is.
You don't clean out the fridge long enough.
Cover art for I'd love to see Tim Jacobus's cover art for Frog's Breath Can Kill You. I want to see that would be a cool artwork. I just want to see it. It's in my brain.
And I mean, he kind of did something similar for the Bone Chiller's book, Creature Teacher or Teacher Creature, whatever it was called. That one had a big frog on it with the massive tongue sliding out. I really like The Grim Reaper Lives in My Locker. Isn't that an interesting one? But You, Me, Monster Makes 3. I think that's a really good one, too.
Yeah, it is solid.
Yeah, very solid titles, but Slime Doesn't Pay kicked all their asses.
Yeah.
Well, I don't want to brag, but I mean, sometimes some ideas are just better, you know?
Yeah. Some ideas are just amazing and others suck. Now we just got to find those.
They
other
only
5
suck
people.
in comparison to my idea.
Yes. Very much so. Now we got to find those other 5 people and do interviews with them.
Yeah, get on it, Austin.
We could get all their books.
I can tell you. I think Jude found the person who did You, Me, and Monster Makes 3. I don't know about the other 4, but I know we found at least one of them.
That's really
Next thing is you got to get us all on a panel. and we can all share our
Can you
memories
imagine?
of the series.
Oh yeah.
Every book that comes out in this is those titles. Like the next title
man.
is Frog's Breath Can Kill You.
Reaper lives in my locker.
Yeah,
Dude, he
That
should
would be
do it.
interesting.
He would make several kids very, very happy.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Make them live the dream
yours was
that
book
you are
number
living
one.
right now. That
That's
would
right.
be great. That would be awesome. And yes, if we can ever get them, I smell a reunion.
you
Do
have
it
to wear
for-
a crown though in that one. You have
Oh,
to wear
God.
a crown.
Hey, you guys send it to me. I'll wear it.
Yep. You gotta have the official crown that says King of all Goosebumps.
How did you know I made one of those when I was a kid?
I just had a feeling. I'm a little psychic on the inside. But that is going to do it for tonight's episode of the Goosebumps Crew Podcast. Jim, thank you so much for joining us. It was an absolute delight to talk some Goosebumps with you. Congratulations on getting your title used on the book. Seriously, I'm super happy for you.
Thanks so much, and thanks for having me. This has been a great time.
Absolutely. We were happy to talk with you. And also thanks to Austin, Goosebumps Completionist, for joining us again. It's always a delight to have you on here. So thanks, man. If you guys liked today's episode, make sure you leave a like and comment. And if you're watching us on YouTube, make sure you subscribe and hit the bell notification. Follow us on our audio platforms, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Amazon Music, and the iHeartRadio. And follow us on social media at Instagram, Twitter, TikTok, and Facebook. You can also follow Bjorn and Nick at Goosebumps Aussie Fan and Sean, respectively, on their social medias and YouTubes, as well as Goosebumps Completionist on YouTube and social medias. Also, go check out Austin's Goosebumps podcast, Goose Junkies. That is another great Goosebumps podcast, so go check that out. And until next time, we'll have another episode for you guys next week. But until then, this has been the Goosebumps Crew Podcast, and from all of us here, we want to wish you all, as always, to take care, stay safe, and have a very scary day.